3 years after my sister defended my attacker, he struck again, at her own wedding. Now she's divorced, in therapy, and drowning in guilt. I've been with my partner for 6 years now since we first met. He's really close to my family and always shows up for our key events. My sister has been seeing her fiancé for 3 years, and they became engaged 8 months ago. She is the type of girl who has always wanted to be married. It didn't matter who proposed, she simply wanted to get married. In the beginning of her relationship, she duped me into going on a double date with her fiancé and his brother. She had stated that it was dinner with her and a buddy, but it was clearly not. The brother kept making unwanted advances at me the entire time, and I told him I had a partner, so the setting made me uncomfortable. During dinner, as I was using the restroom, the fiancé's brother followed me and attempted to touch me. I told my sister, but she sided with her fiancé's brother and refused to believe me. At their engagement party, my partner observed that the brother couldn't stop staring at me, so we did our best to avoid him. Every time I see this person, he acts strangely towards me. My sister wanted me, my twin, and 2 brothers to attend her wedding. The wedding is scheduled for next month, mid-June. My sister just told me that I'll be walking down the aisle beside her fiancé's brother. I told her he was making me uncomfortable, and he touched me. I mentioned that I expected I'd be walking with my brother. Apparently her fiancé insists on this, and she wants to make him happy. It seems strange to insist on something like that, and I'm sure it's a plot between the 2 brothers. My other siblings thought it was strange and expressed their concerns to our sister. She became agitated and said, "This is her wedding, and she'll do whatever she wants." I informed my boyfriend about this, and he was unhappy for me. He's confident enough in himself to know that this person will never be a competitor, but he understands how uncomfortable I feel in the circumstance. We had a family meal at my mother's house recently. I used this as an opportunity to bring up the aisle dilemma with my mother present. I refrained from discussing the touching because it happened a while ago. Besides, I'd already told my sister and hinted at it to my parents, but nothing was done. I just discussed the aisle situation. My sister became quite agitated and began crying, accusing me of attempting to destroy her marriage. I was perplexed, as did everyone else, and attempted to explain that he makes both me and my boyfriend quite uncomfortable. She then told me that I couldn't bring my boyfriend to her wedding anymore, and that if I did, I wouldn't be a bridesmaid. She gave no explanation for why I couldn't bring him, and my siblings were as furious, given that they prefer my boyfriend over my sister's fiancé. I thought I'd give her a few days to cool off and reconsider, but she hasn't changed her mind. My 20-year-old brother's girlfriend remains invited to the wedding. My partner is an amazing guy who has been nothing but nice and generous to my sister. His feelings are bruised, yet he still wants me to attend the wedding. I believe my sister is being unreasonable, and I will be quite upset at the wedding if my life partner is not present. I have no idea what to do, and my family is no help either. Julian, my twin brother, called me aside after dinner. He grasped my shoulders and stared me directly in the eyes. "This is ridiculous, Elena. Do you know that?" His hand shook slightly. "The way Sophie exploded like that. Something isn't right here." I nodded, wiping tears away with the back of my palm. My mother remained in the kitchen, purposefully clanging dishes louder than necessary. She always did this when she wanted to avoid conflict. My father had already retired to his study, mumbling something about needing to check emails. Nico, my youngest brother, kicked a dining room chair. "This is so..." My girlfriend Amelie is still invited, but Luca cannot attend. He's been around much longer than her fiancé. He slipped his hands into his pockets. "I'm calling Sophie out on this." "Don't," I replied hastily. "It'll just make things worse." But Nico had already pulled out his phone. I watched him typing furiously with his jaw gritted. Within seconds his phone vibrated. His expression hardened as he read the response. "She says, 'It's different because I'm in the wedding party and you're just a bridesmaid.'" He slammed his phone on the table. "Like that makes any sense." Julian went back and forth through the dining room. "We should talk to her together. All 3 of us make her see sense." I shake my head. "You didn't notice her expression when I brought it up." She looked at me as if I were an enemy. My voice cracked. All I said was that Adrian makes me uncomfortable. "Adrian!" Julian spat out the name. "That is his name. The creep who refuses to leave you alone." I had not intended to utter his name, but it slipped out. I dropped into a chair, my legs suddenly weakening. At the engagement reception he kept making reasons to be near me. Luca noticed before I did. We spent half of the night dodging him. Nico threw his fist upon the table. "And now Sophie wants you to walk arm in arm with him while your actual boyfriend sits at home." My mother eventually came from the kitchen, dish towel in hand. She refused to meet my gaze. Maybe you should just do what your sister asks, Elena. It's only a day. Mom. Julian whirled on her. Are you serious now? She twisted the dish towel in her hands. I just don't want to see the family torn apart over this. The family is already being torn apart, Nico told me, by Sophie and her insane demands. My phone vibrated. Luca's name appeared on screen. I responded quickly, anxious to hear his voice. Hey, he said softly. How did it go? Terribly. I stepped out onto the back porch for privacy. She banned you from the wedding. Silence stretched between us. I could hear him breathing and absorbing the information. Eventually, he spoke. Why don't you want to stroll with that guy? Because I dared to say it in front of our mother? I sat on the porch steps, bringing my knees up to my chest. Luca, I'm very sorry. This is quite unfair to you. Quit apologizing. This isn't your fault. His voice was calm, but I could hear the pain beneath. After 6 years together, you've decided not to invite me to your sister's wedding because you want to protect yourself from a predator. The word lingered in the air between us. Predator. We'd never said it out, but we both knew Adrian was like that. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Part of me wants to skip the whole thing, but then I'll be the sister who ruined Sophie's wedding. You wouldn't be ruining anything. She's doing that all on her own. Luca was silent. But I know how much your family means to you. If you need to go, I'll understand. Without you? Walk down that aisle with Adrian while you're sitting at home? My tone was raised. That's not happening. Then don't go, he replied simply. Elena, you've spent your whole life trying to keep peace in your family. Maybe it's time to choose yourself. After we hung up, I sat on the porch until the sun began to drop. Julian met me there carrying a blanket and 2 mugs of tea. I called Sophie. He continued, sitting alongside me. Tried to talk sense into her, and she hung up on me. He handed me a mug, but not before saying some horrible things about you. Trying to divert focus away from her big day. I laughed bitterly. By not wanting to be groped by her future brother-in-law? Julian's face clouded. Is that what happened? He actually touched you? I stared at my tea, watching the steam rise. 3 years ago, on that double date she duped me into, he followed me to the restroom and... I couldn't finish the statement. Jesus, Elena. Julian firmly laid down his mug. Sophie knows this? I told her that night. She said I must have misunderstood his intentions. The recollection lingered. Said Adrian told her I came on to him. That's complete. Julian stood up again, pacing. We need to tell Mom and Dad the whole story. I tried hints before, but they didn't want to hear it. I tightened the blanket around myself. Nobody wants to believe that Sophie's perfect wedding involves forcing me to walk with my assaulter. The word tasted odd in my mouth. Assaulter. But it is who he was. Over the next few days my phone was inundated with texts. Extended family members immediately expressed their feelings regarding my selfishness. Sophie had apparently been calling everyone, portraying me as the monster who was jealous of her happiness. My aunt sent a text. Your sister only gets one wedding day. Can't you put aside your feelings for a few hours? My cousin left a message. I heard you're causing drama about the processional. That's pretty petty, Elena. Each message felt like an additional weight on my chest. I presented them to Luca when he arrived for supper. This is insane, he exclaimed, skimming through the texts. She's turned the entire family against you. Not everyone. I pointed to the living room where Julian and Nico were preparing a movie. The boys are on my side. 3 against the rest of the family. Luca put down my phone. Those aren't great odds. Nico heard and came over. Actually, I've been doing some digging. Amelie's cousin went to college with Adrian. She says he had a reputation for being handsy at parties. My stomach twisted. Of course he did. There's more, Nico added. Amelie heard from her cousin that Adrian's been telling people at their engagement parties that he and Elena have history. Luca's face became hard. He's telling people what? Yeah, apparently he makes it sound like they had a thing. Nico expressed distaste. Amelie didn't want to say anything before, but after what happened at dinner. She thought Elena should know. I felt nauseous. Adrian was fabricating a story in which we had agreed on something, laying the groundwork for further deception. I need to confront Sophie with this, I stated, standing up. No. Julian placed his hand on my shoulder. Let me and Nico do it. If it comes from you, she'll just say you're making things up. They departed that evening to go meet Sophie at her flat. I walked my living room as Luca attempted to divert me with work anecdotes. 2 hours later, my brothers returned, looking defeated. She wouldn't even let us in, Julian explained. Talked to us through the door chain. Nico hurled himself onto my couch. She said Adrian already told her about the history thing, claims you led him on at the double date, and now you're embarrassed about it. That's not what happened, I exclaimed, shocking myself with the volume. We know, Julian replied kindly. But she's choosing to believe him. Or at least pretend she does. Luca placed his arms around me as I started crying. Not soft tears, but angry, frustrated sobbing. 6 years of keeping the peace, swallowing my words to keep everyone pleased. And this is where it went. My telephone rang. Mom. Elena, you need to apologize to your sister, she stated without pause. This has gone too far. Apologize for what? I placed her on speaker for everyone to hear. For not wanting to walk with someone who assaulted me? Don't be dramatic. Your sister says it was a misunderstanding. Mom, he followed me into a restaurant bathroom and put his hands on me. That's not a misunderstanding. Silence. Then. That was 3 years ago, Elena. Can't you move past it for your sister's sake? I hung up. The next morning I received more texts. This time from Sophie herself. If you really cared about my happiness, you'd stop making this about you. Adrian is going to be family. You need to get over yourself. I can't believe you're trying to ruin my wedding over some supposed incident from years ago. That final one made me see crimson. A supposed event. I screenshotted each message and emailed it to my brothers. Within minutes they both called me. That's it, Julian said. I'm done trying to reason with her. Same, Nico said. If she wants to prioritize that creep over her own sister, that's on her. Despite their encouragement, I felt split. The wedding was 4 weeks away. RSVPs have been sent. My bridesmaid dress hung in my closet, a lavender memory of happier times when Sophie and I planned our ideal weddings together. Luca saw me gazing at the outfit one evening. You don't have to decide right now, he said me, throwing his arms around me from behind. The wedding is in 4 weeks, and you can decide on the morning of if you want. He kissed my temples. Whatever you choose, I support you. Even if I go without you? His arms tightened slightly. Even then though, I'd be lying if I said it wouldn't hurt. I turned into his arms to face him. It's not fair. You've been to every family Christmas, every birthday, every celebration for 6 years. You helped my dad fix the deck last summer. You taught Nico to drive stick shift, and now you're banned because I won't walk with someone who hurt me. Life isn't fair, he explained simply. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it. 3 weeks before the wedding, I made one final try. I texted Sophie and asked to meet for coffee, just the two of us. To my astonishment, she consented. We gathered at our old favorite cafe, where we used to study throughout college. She appeared exhausted, with worry reflected in the dark circles beneath her eyes. Planning a wedding is exhausting, she stated as a greeting. I nodded and ordered my normal latte. We sat in uneasy quiet until the drinks arrived. Sophie, I said softly. I need you to understand what Adrian did. Stop. She raised her hand. I don't want to hear another word about ancient history. 3 years isn't ancient history. It is when you're trying to destroy my relationship. Her voice increased, leading other customers to stare. Do you know what situation you're placing me in? My fiance's family already thinks you are tough because you refuse to give Adrian a chance. I've got a guy. Why should I give Adrian any chance? That's not the point. She fiercely swirled her coffee. The point is, you're making me choose between my sister and my future family. No, you're choosing between your sister's safety and your fiance's brother's feelings. I shifted my weight. He assaulted me, Sophie. He tells them that we have history. He stares at me at all family gatherings. And you want me to walk arm in arm with him while my real partner is prohibited from going. Luca is not banned, she stated politely. You're choosing to exclude him by being difficult about the processional. That's the same thing. She rose abruptly. I'm done talking about this. You have the option of being my bridesmaid and participating in the processional I have prepared, or staying at home. But quit attempting to manipulate me with your victim complex. She left me sitting there, my coffee getting cold and her words reverberating in my ears. Victim complex. That night, I made a decision. I called Luca first. He answered on the second ring, and I could hear his concern before I said anything. I'm done, I said. my voice unusually calm. I'm not going to the wedding. Are you sure? He inquired kindly. I don't want you to regret this later. The only thing I'd regret is walking down that aisle with Adrian while you're sitting at home. I held my phone more tightly. She described it as my victim complex. Can you believe it? Luca was silent for a bit. When he spoke, his voice was tense with repressed wrath. She's deceiving you. Do you know that? I knew. But seeing him say it aloud made it more real, and it stung more than I had anticipated. The next morning, I awoke to find Julian and Nico already in my apartment. They had let themselves in with the spare key and were preparing breakfast in my kitchen. We figured you might need moral support, Julian explained, cooking pancakes and food. Nico was swiping through his phone, his look becoming darker with each swipe. Sophie's been posting on social media about ungrateful family members trying to sabotage her happiness. She's not naming names, Julian said hastily, noticing my expression. But anyone who knows the situation knows she means you. I slid into a bar stool at my kitchen counter. I haven't even told her I'm not coming yet. She's preempting, Nico replied. Getting her version out there first. My phone vibrated. A text from my cousin Isabel. I saw Sophie's posts. What's actually going on? Before I could react, another text arrived, followed by another. Within minutes my phone was filled with messages from extended family members, all of whom wanted to know what was going on. Don't respond yet, Julian said, setting a plate of pancakes in front of me. Eat first, and then we'll figure out a strategy. But I could not eat. My stomach was knotted. 6 years of meticulously keeping family unity, and it was all coming apart because I refused to be partnered with my assaulter. That afternoon, my father finally called. I was wondering when he'd end his stillness. Your mother is very upset, he said, revealing everything I needed to know about where this talk was going. I'm upset too, Dad. He breathed deeply. Elena, I know this situation isn't ideal, but sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family. Sacrifices. My voice was filled with disbelief. Adrian sexually assaulted me, Dad. He followed me into the bathroom and placed his hands on me. That is not a sacrifice. That is asking me to accept abuse. That's a very serious accusation, he stated cautiously. This is not an accusation. This is what occurred. I was pacing with my free hand clenched into a fist. I informed Sophie immediately. I tried to tell you and Mom. Nobody wants to hear it. Your sister says you misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand him pressing me against a wall. I didn't misunderstand someone following me into a bathroom and grabbing me. I did not misinterpret having to physically shove him away and lock myself in a stall until he departed. Silence on the other end. Then why didn't you tell us this earlier? I tried, but every time I brought it up, you and Mom changed the subject, or Sophie interrupted to say I was being dramatic. Tears were spilling down my cheeks now. And now she wants me to link arms with him and smile while my boyfriend of 6 years sits at home. Maybe if you just talk to Adrian. I hung up with my father. I had never done that before. My hands were shaking. Julian, who had been listening from the couch, got up instantly. That is it. I am calling Dad myself. Don't, I whispered softly. It won't help. But Julian was already phoning. I listened to his side of the talk and watched his expression change from annoyed to furious. No, Dad, you listen to me, he responded, his tone absolutely calm. Elena's telling the truth. I've seen Adrian at every family gathering since. The way he looks at her and tries to approach her is predatory. And you're asking her not only to be near him, but to physically touch him in front of everyone she cares about. A pause, followed by, I don't care if it rocks the boat. Some boats should be rocked. He hung up and turned to me. Dad says I'm being influenced by your version of events. Nico hurled a pillow across the room, frustrated. This is insane. How come everyone is siding with Sophie and not listening to Elena? Because it's easier. I replied gently. It's easier to believe I'm being dramatic than to accept that Sophie is choosing her fiancé's family over her sister's safety. That evening, Luca arrived after work. He discovered me surrounded by printed screenshots of text messages, attempting to arrange them chronologically. What is all this? He asked, placing down his laptop bag. Evidence, I stated. In case I need to explain to people why I'm not at the wedding. He sat near me and picked up one of the papers. It was a screenshot of Sophie's text regarding my alleged encounter. You don't owe anyone an explanation, he remarked kindly. I know, but I also know how this family works. If I don't have receipts, I'll be painted as the sister who was jealous of Sophie's happiness and skipped her wedding out of spite. Luca drew me into his side. Have I told you lately how proud I am of you? For what? For causing family drama 4 weeks before my sister's wedding. For standing up for yourself. For refusing to be silenced. For choosing your safety over keeping the peace. He kissed the top of my head. I know how hard this is for you. The following few days were a whirl of family politics. Aunts and uncles called, each attempting to mediate. Most of them began with some variation of, and I am sure this is all a misunderstanding. My Aunt Helena was the absolute worst. Elena dear, you know how men can be. Sometimes they're just more affectionate than we're comfortable with. That doesn't make them bad people. He followed me into a bathroom, Aunt Helena. Well, maybe he just needed to use the facilities too. It was the women's bathroom. That briefly silenced her. Still, is it worth missing your sister's wedding over something that happened years ago? I began keeping track of how many family members used the statement years ago, as if time had made assault acceptable. By day 3, I'd reached 14. Nico's girlfriend Amélie came by suddenly one afternoon. She appeared worried, fiddling with her car keys. I need to tell you something, she said. About Adrian. My stomach sank. What about him? My cousin. The one who went to college with him. She reached out after Nico told me what was happening. Amélie sat down, still holding her keys. She said she didn't tell me everything before. Adrian, he had to leave his fraternity junior year. There were multiple complaints from girls at parties. Complaints about what? I inquired, although I already knew the answer. Inappropriate touching. Following girls who were trying to get away from him. One girl said he cornered her in a bathroom at a frat party. Amélie's gaze met mine. Sound familiar? I felt nauseous. Did anything happen to him? The fraternity quietly removed him, but the school didn't take action because no one filed formal reports. The girls were all told it would be he said, she said, and Adrian's father apparently donated a lot to the school. Of course he did, I said, laughing cruelly. Let me guess. His family has money. Amélie nodded. Old money. The kind that makes problems go away. After she departed, I sat with this newfound knowledge. Adrian wasn't just some creep who targeted me. He was a serial predator, shielded by wealth and position. My sister was marrying into that family. I called Julian immediately. We need to tell Sophie about Adrian's history. She won't believe it, he explained. You know she won't. We have to try. So we did. Julian, Nico and I visited Sophie's place that evening. This time, she let us in, despite the fact that her fiancé was clearly present. We have information about Adrian that you need to hear, Julian told you. Sophie's fiancé Luca tightened up immediately. If this is another attempt to slander my brother. It's not slander if it's true, Nico interjected. He was kicked out of his fraternity for assaulting multiple women. That's a lie, Luca stated plainly. Adrian left the fraternity because he was too busy with his studies. Amélie's cousin was there, I explained. She knows girls who filed complaints. Sophie laughed when she heard Amélie's cousin. How convenient. A friend of a friend of a friend says something bad about Adrian just when Elena needs ammunition against him. This isn't ammunition, I remarked, frustrated. This is a pattern of behavior. He did to those girls exactly what he did to me. What he allegedly did to you, Luca clarified. Adrian told me what really happened that night. You came onto him. He politely declined because you had a boyfriend, and now you're embarrassed about it. That's not what happened. I got up, my entire body trembling with wrath. He followed me into the women's bathroom and grabbed me. The women's bathroom? Luca asked, smirking. Adrian would never do that. He's too much of a gentleman. Your brother is a predator, Julian stated bluntly. And if you can't see that, get out, Sophie murmured gently. All of you, get out of my home. Sophie, please. I tried once more. I'm your sister. Why would I lie about this? She stared me directly in the eyes. Because you've always been jealous of me. I'm younger, but I'm getting married first. I found someone who wants to build a life with me while you're still just dating after 6 years. The word struck me like a physical blow. You think I'm making up sexual assault because I'm jealous that you're getting married? I think you're making a big deal out of nothing because you can't stand that my wedding isn't about you. She opened her flat door. Leave and don't contact me again unless it's to apologize. We departed in startled silence. Nico punched the elevator wall, causing a minor damage. She's lost her mind, he remarked. Completely lost it. She's in too deep, Julian remarked gently. She's chosen her side, and now she has to defend it no matter what. That night I was unable to sleep. I kept reliving Sophie's statements, feeling jealous and making it about myself. Luca held me while I cried, not saying anything, just being present. The next morning I awoke to see my mother in the living room. Luca let her in on his way to work. "We need to talk," she said. I brewed coffee to keep my hands busy. When I sat down across from her, I observed she appeared older and exhausted. "Your father told me what you said about the bathroom." I waited, not trusting my ability to speak. "Why didn't you tell me?" she inquired, sounding genuinely interested for the first time. "I tried, Mom, but every time I brought up Adrian making me uncomfortable, you or Dad would change the subject, or Sophie would interrupt, or you'd tell me not to cause drama." She was silent for a long time. "I suppose we did do that." "You suppose?" "I just wanted everyone to get along," she explained weakly. "I thought if we didn't make a big deal out of it, it would go away." "It doesn't go away, Mom." Adrian didn't go away. He kept staring, kept trying to get close to me, and now Sophie wants me to walk with him. And when I said no, she banned Luca from the wedding. She's under a lot of stress with the wedding planning. Stop. I raised my hand. Stop making excuses for her. She knows what Adrian did. She's choosing not to believe me. That's not stress. That's a choice. My mother twisted her wedding band around her finger, an anxious habit I inherited. "So, you're really not going to the wedding? Would you go? If Dad was banned because you wouldn't walk with someone who assaulted you, would you go?" She didn't respond, which was enough. After she went, I felt weary but strangely clearer than I had in weeks. The lines were drawn. I knew where everybody stood. Over the next week the family schism widened. Cousins picked sides. Aunts and uncles murmured during family gatherings that I no longer attended. Sophie resumed her social media campaign, blogging about toxic family members and the need of eliminating negativity. Isabel, my cousin who had texted earlier, came to see me. She was one of the few family members who hadn't taken sides yet. "I need to hear your version," she stated simply. So I told her everything. The double date arrangement, the bathroom attack, Adrian looking at every family gathering, the engagement party where Luca and I spent the night avoiding him, Sophie's ultimatum, and everything else. Isabel burst into tears as I concluded. "Elena, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "No one wants to have any idea," I told them. "It's easier to believe I'm being difficult." "I believe you," she replied firmly. "And I'm not going to the wedding either." "Isabel, no, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I have a daughter, Elena. She's only 4 now, but someday she'll be a young woman. How can I go to a wedding that celebrates silencing assault victims? What message does that send?" Her support meant more to me than I could explain, but it also resulted in additional family conflict. Sophie called me screaming when she learned Isabel was boycotting the wedding. "You're turning the whole family against me," she sobbed into the phone. "This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you're ruining it." "I'm not doing anything," I explained, trying to remain cool. I told Isabel the truth when she asked. She made her own decision. "The truth? Your version of the truth? You mean Adrian's a good guy? Luca says." "Luca is his brother. Of course he's going to defend him. And you're my sister. You're supposed to defend me." "I tried to, Sophie. I tried to protect you by telling you what kind of person Adrian is. You chose not to listen." She hung up on me. 3 weeks before the wedding, things became much more serious. Luca began phoning Julian at work and leaving messages about how I was ruining their family. He actually told Luca to control his girlfriend better. Luca explained, showing me the SMS messages. "Like your property I'm supposed to manage," he exclaimed. "I'm so sorry you're getting dragged into this. I told you." He clasped my face in his hands and said, "Hey. We're a team. Your battles are my battles. Though, I have to say your future brother-in-law seems like a real piece of work. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, apparently." Luca's jaws constricted. "Has Adrian tried to contact you?" "No, thank God, though Nico said he saw him at the gym yesterday. Adrian made some comment about looking forward to the wedding. That's it." Luca took out his phone. "I'm calling Julian back. This needs to stop." I listened as Luca gently but firmly informed Julian that any more contact from him or Adrian would result in legal action. The threat of attorneys seems to work. The calls ceased, but the familial pressure continued. Every day brought new attempts at reconciliation, but they all followed the same pattern. I must apologize. I should be a bigger person. I should think about Sophie's happiness. Nobody mentioned Sophie should think about my safety. Julian and Nico arranged an intervention 2 weeks before their wedding. They arrived at my apartment with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. We've been thinking, Julian explained, unpacking the food. Maybe you should write Sophie a letter. Lay out everything one final time. Then at least you'll know you tried everything. What's the point? I inquired. She won't believe me. The point is your own peace of mind, Nico explained. Years from now, you'll know you gave her every chance to make this right. So I wrote a letter. It took me 4 days and several drafts. I explained everything. The attack, Adrian's persistent behavior, my attempts to resolve it discreetly, her failure to believe me, and the unfairness of banning Luca. What I said was this. I love you, Sophie. You're my sister, and that will never change. But I cannot and will not put myself in a position where I have to touch the man who assaulted me. I cannot celebrate while my partner of 6 years is excluded for the crime of supporting me. If you change your mind, even at the last minute, we'll be there. But I won't sacrifice my safety and self-respect for anyone, not even you. I emailed it to her email address and waited. The response arrived within hours. Not from Sophie, but from Luca's brother Adrian. Your sister showed me your manipulative letter. It's clear you're mentally unstable and determined to destroy our happiness. You're no longer welcome at our wedding or in our lives. Any further contact will be considered harassment. I stared at the email, reading it repeatedly. Sophie has already been assimilated into Luca's family. No longer an individual, but a member of a group that did not include me. That's it then, I said Luca, showing him the email. He read it, and his expression darkened. Mentally unstable. They're really going all in on the gaslighting. I'm done, I replied. And I intended it. I tried. My conscience is clear. The final week before the wedding felt unreal. Family members made last-ditch efforts to persuade me to reconsider my mind. My bridesmaid dress hung in my wardrobe like a ghost. Sophie blocked me on all social media, but Julian told me she was uploading beautiful wedding prep photographs as if nothing was wrong. 4 days before the wedding, my father made one final attempt. He arrived at my apartment alone, appearing uncomfortable. Your mother has no idea I am here, he said. Okay. I've been thinking about what you said about the bathroom. He was unable to meet my gaze. I believe you, Elena. The words should have meant something, but they were too late. But you still think I should go to the wedding? He exhaled. I think sometimes families have to work around difficult people. We don't have to like everyone, but we show up. Adrian isn't difficult, Dad. He's dangerous. And Sophie is choosing him over me. She's choosing her fiancé's family. It's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I was too tired to be angry any longer. Dad, what would you do if someone hurt Mom? Would you just work around them? He did not respond. But his silence told volumes. After he went, I sat in my apartment, staring at the family photos on my wall, including Sophie and me at Christmas last year, laughing at something Julian had said. The 5 of us siblings attended our parents' anniversary party. Luca and I celebrated Thanksgiving with my entire family. Those moments felt like they were from another lifetime now. The night before the wedding, I couldn't get comfortable. Luca suggested we go out and do something to take my mind off things, but everywhere we went, I pondered what was going on at the rehearsal dinner that I was not attending. She made her choice, Luca softly reminded me as we strolled through the park. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I know. It just hurts. I know it does. He squeezed my hand. But I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. My phone buzzed while we strolled. Nico texted, rehearsal was weird without you. Sophie had Luca's cousin step in as a bridesmaid. Mom cried. Dad seemed unhappy. Adrian joked that you were too delicate to fulfill wedding chores. I switched my phone off. Tomorrow, as Sophie walked down the aisle, I'd be anywhere but there. And for the first time since the mess began, I was positive I was making the proper decision. The morning of the wedding was dreary and drizzling, which seemed suitable. I awoke early, as if my body had not received the signal that I didn't need to be somewhere. Luca was already awake and preparing coffee in the kitchen. How are you feeling? Strange, I confessed. Like I should be somewhere else. You are exactly where you should be, he firmly stated, offering me a drink. My phone started buzzing at 7 a.m. Text messages from extended relatives wondering if I had changed my mind, if I was coming, and if there was still time to rectify this. I switched it off without responding. Julian and Nico arrived around 10 o'clock, dressed in groomsman garb. They appeared attractive but uncomfortable. "We wanted to see you before we went," Julian explained. "Make sure you're okay." "I'm okay," I said, mostly meaning it. "You two look good." "Feel like traitors," Nico mumbled, yanking on his tie. "You're not traitors. You're brothers trying to support both sisters in an impossible situation." I hugged each of them. "Go try to have fun." They departed reluctantly, and the apartment seemed too quiet. Luca suggested we go wherever, but I couldn't seem to get off the couch. "I keep thinking about when we were kids," I confessed. "Sophie and I used to plan our weddings together. We'd be each other's maids of honor, our kids would grow up together, we had it all figured out." "Life rarely goes according to our childhood plans," Luca explained gently. "I know. I just never imagined it would go this wrong." Around noon, as I realized the ceremony was about to begin, I finally broke down. Luca held me while I grieved, grieving not just for the wedding I was missing, but also for the relationship with my sister, which would never repair. "She chose him," I exclaimed. "She chose a predator and his enabling family over her own sister. She chose the illusion of a perfect wedding over the reality of who she was marrying into." Luca corrects. "And someday she'll have to face that reality." As it turned out, someday arrived sooner than anyone anticipated. The reception was scheduled for 3 p.m. I knew this since Nico texted me the timeline weeks ago, when we still assumed I'd be there. At 3:30 my phone rang. "Julian. Elena, something happened." His speech was strained, barely heard above the background commotion. I sat up straighter. "What's wrong?" "Adrian cornered one of the servers during cocktail hour. Luca's cousin Victor saw the whole thing. The girl was trying to get past him to the kitchen, and he blocked her path, put his hands on her waist." Julian dropped his voice. "She's 20. The catering manager is threatening to pull his entire staff." My heart pounded. "Where's Sophie?" "Getting her makeup touched up. She doesn't know yet. Luca is trying to smooth things over with the catering company, offering them more money to stay quiet." "Of course he is." I grabbed Luca's hand. "Is the server okay?" "Shaken up. Victor's girlfriend got her away from Adrian and took her outside. The girl's manager wants to call the police, but Luca is begging him not to." I heard shouts in the background. Julian cursed behind his breath. "I have to go. The photographer just quit. Apparently Adrian made comments about her appearance when she was setting up earlier." The call went dead. Luca and I sat in startled silence. Nico called around 25 minutes later. "You're not going to believe this. Isabel just caused a scene." "Isabel's there?" I thought she wasn't going. "She came for the ceremony but skipped the cocktail hour. When she heard about the server, she stood up during Luca's father's toast and announced what Adrian did in front of everyone." I covered my lips with my hand. "Oh God." Half the room is in chaos. Luca's mother is screaming at Isabel. Dad's trying to mediate. Mom's crying and Sophie. Nico sighed. "Sophie slapped Isabel." "She what?" "Slapped her right there in front of 180 guests. Then she grabbed the microphone and said anyone who believed Isabel's lies could leave." My phone beeped. Another call coming in. "Nico, Julian's calling. I'll call you back." I switched over. Julian was breathing rapidly. "Elena, it's getting worse. 3 of Luca's fraternity brothers just confronted Adrian about the server. Turns out they knew about his history at college. One of them, Marco Keller, said he's been waiting years to call Adrian out publicly. Where's security? There is no security. Sophie thought it was an unnecessary expense. He laughed angrily. The venue manager is threatening to shut the whole thing down. Guests are leaving in droves. I overheard a crash in the background. What was that? Adrian just shoved Marco Keller into the gift table. Nico's trying to break it up. I have to go help. The following hour was a haze of fragmentary updates. Isabel provided images of the mayhem, including upturned chairs, strewn centerpieces, and Sophie's mascara pouring down her cheeks as she yelled at departing guests. The catering staff had walked out. The DJ was loading his equipment. At 4:45 p.m., my father called. His voice sounded hollow. "The wedding's over." The venue kicked everyone out. "Dad, I'm so sorry." "Are you?" He seemed genuinely curious, not accusing. "Because I'm starting to think you're the only one who saw this coming." "Where's Sophie?" "Luca took her back to their hotel. She's not handling it well. Your mother went with them." He was grumbling. "Elena, I owe you an apology. When Marco Keller told us about Adrian's college history, when that young server was crying, I kept thinking about you in that bathroom 3 years ago. It's too late for apologies, Dad. I know. I just needed to say it. After we hung up, I sat down on our couch with Luca to process everything. My phone kept buzzing with texts from family members who had witnessed the accident. Each account added additional information. Adrian appears to have propositioned 2 additional women throughout the reception. Luca attempted to physically block guests from leaving. Sophie had torn her dress while chasing after Isabel. That evening, Julian and Nico arrived. They were weary, even in their ragged groomsmen clothes. It was worse than we could tell you over the phone, Julian remarked, dropping on my couch. After the venue kicked us out, Adrian tried to follow that server to her car. Her manager had to physically restrain him while she drove away. Is she pressing charges? Luca inquired. Her manager wants her to, but she's scared. Adrian's family has money. Good lawyers. Nico unfastened his tie. Same old story. What about Sophie? The brothers exchanged looks. She's in denial, Julian finally said, blaming everyone but Adrian. Says Isabel ruined her wedding. The server was overreacting. The photographer was too sensitive. Luca is enabling it, Nico added. He's already spinning it as a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't respond, but something made me pick up. Is this Elena? Said a young woman, anxious and apprehensive. Yes. Who's this? I'm Emily. I was the server at your sister's wedding today. Your cousin Isabel gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Of course. Are you all right? Her voice shook as she said, I'm trying to be. I wanted to thank you. Isabel told me about what happened to you. Why you weren't there. It helped to know I wasn't alone, that someone else understood. I'm so sorry this happened to you. My manager wants me to file a police report, but I'm scared. Adrian's brother already called the catering company, threatening to sue for defamation if I say anything publicly. That's witness intimidation, Luca stated loudly enough for her to hear. That's illegal. Emily asked, Who's that? My boyfriend. He's right. They can't threaten you for telling the truth. Would you? She paused. Would you come with me to file the report? I know we don't know each other, but Isabel said you'd understand. I looked at Luca, who nodded instantly. Of course. When? Tomorrow morning, the officer said 9 a.m. We'll be there. After she hung up, I sat back and felt the weight of the day. My sister's wedding had gone precisely as I had expected, but worse. Now, another young woman was suffering with Adrian's predatory conduct. You did the right thing, Luca remarked, understanding my expression. Not going today. I know. It just doesn't feel like winning. It's not about winning, Julian explained. It's about protecting yourself. The following morning, Luca and I met Emily at the police station. She was younger than I expected, maybe 20, and had tense hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Her manager, Victor, an older man, joined her. Adrian's lawyer has already called me 3 times, Victor informed us while Emily was presenting her statement. Offering money, threatening lawsuits, but I've been in this business 25 years. I'm not letting another creep get away with hurting one of my staff. The officer collecting the report was thorough, asking comprehensive questions about what happened. When Emily indicated that several witnesses had seen Adrian corner her, the officer's attention increased. Who else saw this? Luca's cousin, some fraternity brothers, the photographer who quit, Emily muttered. Emily stared at me and said, and apparently, he has a history of this behavior. I spent the following hour delivering my own statement on the restroom assault 3 years ago. It seemed odd to finally have someone in charge take it seriously. The officer made notes, asked follow-up questions, and treated it as a crime. As we were leaving, we came across Marco Keller in the parking lot. He had come to make his own statement about what he'd seen at the wedding. I should have said something years ago, he replied. When Adrian was doing this stuff in college, but we all just looked the other way. Figured it wasn't our problem. And now? I asked. Now I have a daughter. She's only 3. But someday. He shook his head. I can't be the guy who stayed silent anymore. Over the next few days, more stories surfaced. The photographer has filed her own complaint. 2 guests complained about Adrian's disrespectful statements. Isabel linked me with 3 women from Adrian's college who were finally willing to speak up. Luca's family attempted damage management. They produced remarks about misconceptions and overreactions, but the truth had gained momentum. The venue prohibited them from ever returning. The catering firm has blacklisted them. Wedding vendors throughout town issued warnings about the family. Sophie called me a week after the wedding for the first time since everything had fallen apart. "Are you happy now?" Her voice sounded rough from crying. "My wedding is ruined, my reputation is destroyed, and it's all over social media." "Sophie, no. You listen. Adrian made some mistakes, but you've blown this completely out of proportion. One incident 3 years ago. It wasn't one incident. You know that now. You saw what happened at your own wedding. That server was flirting with him. She was 20 and trying to do her job, just like I was trying to go to the bathroom when he cornered me." I maintained a consistent tone. "And the photographer? The other guests who've come forward? Were they all flirting too?" Silence. Later. "Luca says his brother is just friendly. People misinterpret." "Sophie, stop. Please. You know the truth. You've always known. I have to leave." Her voice sounded quiet. "Luca's calling me." She hung up. It would be the last time we talked for months. The legal process progressed slowly. Adrian engaged expensive lawyers who did everything to get the accusations dropped. But Amelie remained resolute, backed by the other women who had come forward. I attended each hearing, sitting in the gallery with Luca and my brothers. Of course, Luca supported Adrian by paying his bail, hiring his lawyers, and posting on social media about his brother's bogus accusation. Sophie repeated every phrase, criticizing anyone who dared to speak against her brother-in-law. 4 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon, Julian called me at work. "Sophie left Luca." I almost dropped my phone. "What?" "She showed up at Mom and Dad's an hour ago with 2 suitcases. Won't say what happened, but she's been crying non-stop." "Did she say anything about—" "No. Nothing about you or the wedding or any of it. She just keeps saying she needs to stay there for a while." I wanted to feel vindicated, but instead I felt sad. "Is she okay?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally, I don't think she's been okay for a while." That evening my mother called. "I know you and Sophie aren't speaking, but I thought you should know she's home," she whispered quietly. Julian informed me. "Elena." She paused, selecting her words carefully. She found messages on Luca's phone. He's been covering for Adrian for years. Paying off women, threatening witnesses. She found receipts for payments to 3 different women from before they even met. So she finally believes Adrian's a predator. She found photos. My mom's voice broke. Photos Adrian had taken of women without their consent. Including— her breath caught. "Including one of you from the engagement party. You didn't even know he was taking it." I slid into my bed feeling terrible. He had photos of me? Luca had been keeping them on his phone as insurance, in case you ever went public with the assault. Oh God! "There's more," my mother added. "Sophie found messages between the brothers from right after your wedding confrontation. Adrian was bragging about how he'd finally get to touch you during the processional. Luca was encouraging him." I could not talk. Luca took the phone from me and gently spoke with my mother while I pondered the information. What had my sister's fiancé and his brother been planning? What if I had walked down the aisle with Adrian? 3 days later, a letter appeared in Sophie's handwriting. "Elena, I'm not sure where to begin with this. I'm sorry doesn't seem appropriate. I knew it was too difficult to express. But both are correct. I apologize. I knew. I knew when you told me about the restroom. Adrian always observed you during family gatherings, and I knew. I knew when I told you to walk with him. I knew. I picked my fairy tale above my sister. Luca showed me the images Adrian had taken of you. I laughed about them. Said it demonstrated your want for attention. That's when I realized what I'd been ignoring. What you and everyone else were trying to tell me. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know now. I had always known. I was just too cowardly to admit it. I'm getting divorced. I am in treatment. I'm trying to figure out how I became someone who would sacrifice my sister for a wedding. You were correct about everything. I'm sorry I didn't listen. Sophia." I read the letter 3 times before presenting it to Luca. He held me as I cried, not joyful or sad tears, but tears of relief. "Are you going to respond?" he inquired. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. Whatever you decide, I'm here." The following few months were a whirl of legal proceedings and family dynamics. Adrian eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges in order to avoid a trial, which included 8 months of probation, obligatory counseling, and a restraining order prohibiting him from contacting Amélie or me. Not enough, but something. Luca divorced Sophie as she refused to continue supporting Adrian. He attempted to force her to pay for the cancelled wedding, but her lawyer immediately shut that down. Sophie had also saved receipts for every threat, payoff, and cover-up the brothers had organized. I did not contact Sophie at this period, neither did she. Beyond that one letter, we were in parallel orbits, each healing independently from the tragedy of that connection. Julian broke the impasse. She asks about you, he stated over one of our frequent dinners. Every time I see her, what does she want to know? If you're okay. If you're happy. If you'll ever forgive her. I don't know if I can. I acknowledged. She knew Adrian assaulted me and still tried to force me to touch him. How do you forgive that? You don't have to, Luca replied. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. But as time passed, I began to think of Sophie differently. With empathy rather than rage. She had been so desperate for her fairy tale wedding that she had traded everything real for something unreal. She'd lost her sister, split her family, and married a man who helped his brother prey on women. A year after the wedding, I finally replied to her letter. Only one line. I am delighted you are getting help. She did not respond, but Julian informed me she cried when she read it. Life moved forward. Luca and I got engaged with a modest proposal at home. There's no need for huge gestures. We planned a small wedding for our closest family and friends. No large bridal parties, no forced pairings, and no drama. When it came time to send out invites, I glanced at Sophie's name on my list for a long time. Luca discovered me there, pen hovering over the envelope. You don't have to invite her, he replied. No one would blame you. I know. I set down the pen. I'm not ready. Maybe I'll never be ready. That's okay too. We married 6 months later, in a tiny ceremony in my parents' backyard. Julian was Luca's best man. Nico walked me down the aisle. My parents cried. Isabel delivered a great reading about choosing love over fear. Sophie wasn't present, but she sent a card. I wish you all the happiness I almost stole from you. May your marriage be founded on facts, not fairy tales. With love and regret. Sophia. I kept the card but did not react. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But maybe that is acceptable. Perhaps the lesson is not about forgiveness or reconciliation. Perhaps it's about learning to choose yourself, even if it means sacrificing everything. Perhaps especially then.
Ever having experienced trauma, a lot of people will feel uncomfortable admitting and accepting that they have experienced some trauma. What are some of our misconceptions around what trauma is and how it affects us? And would you mind explaining what sort of experiences are defined as traumatic to help us expand our definition?
So most of us first heard the concept of sort of trauma as we're talking about it now in context of post-traumatic stress disorder and combat veterans. And so even within our field in psychiatry, the majority of people who studied trauma and looked at trauma were looking at the effects of these horrific events, exposure to combat, death of a soldier next to you, as the thing to understand around trauma. But over time, the people like me who were studying the stress response systems in animal models were very well aware that it's not necessarily these big traumatic events that are easily identified by everybody as a trauma that will lead to the changes in the brain that cause the problems. And so certainly if you do have these events, that can be a problem. So natural disaster, house fire, car accident, abuse of all sorts, that's certainly traumatic. But probably the most important thing, and I think the thing that's impacting more children and adults than anything else, are experiences that are patterns of stress activation where you have no control over the experience. It's not predictable and it's prolonged, it's ongoing. And I think to some degree, the experiences of the last year are an example for many people of a prolonged set of uncontrollable and unpredictable stressors. And we've all felt sort of our baseline level of tolerance is going down. We're a little bit more tired. We can handle situations a little bit less. And so what we've been studying is the combination of these experiences where you are not in control of your life. And it may be a child who's living in a domestic violence environment where he or she is not the direct target of all of this stuff, but there's so much unpredictability about when the fighting is going to happen. And there's so much unpredictability about whether mom is going to be in a good mood today or a bad mood, or dad's going to be angry or not angry. And that can lead to these physiological changes that increase your risk for physical health problems, mental health problems, and learning problems. And so that's kind of where we're moving in the field, is this recognition that you don't just have to have some sort of capital T trauma in your life to be impacted by trauma. And in fact, if you are a minority in a majority culture, you're going to get all kinds of experiences where you're getting these relational interactions that are sending the signal that you don't belong, which will activate your stress response, which can over time accumulate and influence your physical and mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Perry, for illuminating on that point, because I think for so many of us, as you rightly just said there, we feel that trauma only means trauma with a capital T. And so we often disregard, we often let these things just fade away and, put them under the carpet and just not really give them enough emphasis and focus because we don't see them as being significant. And so, yes.